hate public bathrooms. Let it be known.
The Change Podcast. Everything changes, everything stays the same.
Why does everything keep on changing?
Hi.
Hey, Jemima.
Welcome back to the Change
Jamumba.
Podcast.
How are you?
My name is actually Gemma Clifton.
Good point. My name is Shane Clifton.
Frequently go by many names as a result of this here delinquent.
He's had a little bit too much whiskey today, but not too much, so I promise to be smooth. It's good quality
beautiful.
whiskey, so, I'm not a cheap drunk. I'm an expensive drunk.
Yes. Yeah, you're an expensive co-host as well.
Hey, it's good to be back with you again.
It is.
It might not seem to our visitors like it's been that long since we podcast, but that's only because it actually took us about 2 months to get the previous recording online.
Yeah, those tech guys take their time.
Our technology people are not great, which does raise a question of our audience. What do you guys think of YouTube? Is it worth it? Should we just do a podcast? Do you love seeing our gorgeous, pretty faces?
Yes. Do you actually watch along?
Yeah.
It's a good question. We would love to hear how you feel, because the audio side of the podcast is easy and the video side is quite difficult technically.
Sort of. It shouldn't actually be that difficult, but for some reason, the video and the audio seem to run at different speeds. And
again, our tech team, not high quality. We should be outsourcing this.
Yes, we make a fortune on this podcast. So, with all that money going into our back pockets, we don't want to have to give too much of it away to, a video team or anything like that.
We want to buy expensive whiskey.
That's right.
Nothing
Expensive
less.
Coats.
Yes.
And quality
Uniqlo.
scarves and things like that. But
Yes. Look,
hey, we are going to talk about something today, and it's a catch-up podcast. We're going to have a conversation, maybe a little bit about bathrooms, about what it's like being in public, transgender in public and disabled in public. They're sort of related topics.
Yes.
We may touch on disabled sport a tiny bit, not very much. Transport. See, I've had a little bit to drink. Neither of us cared too much about trans or sport. Actually, I care a lot about sport. I shouldn't say that, but hey.
I care a lot about trans. I don't care necessarily all that much about sport, but I am a rare case in our civilization of entertainment. But yes, I guess to start, it has been 2.5 months, I think, since we recorded the last one.
Wow.
So,
Life flies when you're having fun and getting closer toward death.
Yeah, it's funner when you don't reflect on that impending doom.
Okay. So what's been happening since the last time we spoke, Jem?
Yeah. So it's been. So I'm now. Sorry, I'm at 8 months into my hormone transition. I guess the latest development has been me realizing how far I need to go. The exponential curve is probably like rounding a bit. The initial changes physically start to kick in quite quickly, and it feels like everything's moving really fast. And now I'm at this place where I'm mid-transition, and I'm really becoming aware of just the distance left in terms of my social transition, and going through a lot of interesting things there. So we can reflect on that too. But before we get too far, I just want to call back to something that we were speaking about in the last podcast, which was that...
This is the one before Anthony Van
The
Brown.
one before Anthony, yes. Sorry, in the last catch-up podcast. It is really interesting to me how much my experience is changing all the time. And I'm constantly finding out more about myself and more about what it means to be trans and a woman and me. And I was speaking in the last podcast about how I felt really like wanting to be nurturing and slow and soft with myself a lot. And maybe I was feeling quite down and tired all the time. And I actually found out quite quickly after that podcast that the testosterone blockers I was taking are a progesterone medication. So they work in blocking they work by blocking my testosterone by giving me progesterone, essentially, which is the secondary female sex hormone that kind of cycles with estrogen and progesterone. Progesterone is what spikes in the week before ovulation during PMS. And so for that reason, the medication that I was on has side effects of low mood, low energy, fatigue, low sex drive, all of those symptoms that I was talking about. And so interestingly, I found out that I was taking a much too high a dose and that I was getting a lot of these side effects. And when I stopped taking it, I had this miraculous return of my energy and
Let's
my
just
mood.
clarify here. You didn't stop taking estrogen.
No,
You stopped taking a blocker.
my testosterone blocker.
It's about balancing, because females do have testosterone. So it's about balancing, getting the appropriate balance between estrogen and testosterone.
Yes, yeah. So I'm still trying to essentially find the medical combination that works for me.
It's fascinating to think of ourselves. We just imagine ourselves as ourselves, but this whole journey is a reminder of how affected we are, of how biological we are. We are a product of genetics and chemicals and environment. I mean, when we think about our own mind and our own behaviors and our own attitudes, we always imagine that it's in our control, but actually so much of ourselves is a product of, in your case, in all of our cases, getting the appropriate balance in our hormones, for example.
Chemical makeup, for example. That's been a really interesting reflection.
And do you feel like you're getting it right at the moment, or that the balance is?
It's still very much up in the air. So I stopped taking my testosterone blocker and I moved to an implant, an estrogen implant. So they just put that under the skin on my bum, and that then is a slow release mechanism. So now I don't have to take anything or use any patches, and it's meant to give you a high dose of estrogen. So we've been trialing whether just it alone is enough to block my testosterone to adequate levels, because I don't, like we're saying, I don't want no testosterone. Females do have low levels of testosterone. I was previously riding at almost zero. The tank was almost completely drained, and that was why I was having these really low sex drives and impacts on my sexual function. And so now, I've been not taking the testosterone blockers for about 6 weeks, and seeing how I feel. I got a blood test last Friday, and I'm going to see my endocrinologist tomorrow to get the results of that and see how I feel.
We're doing this podcast one day too early to get the results of that, but hey.
But that is also the point, because now we get to see where I'm at before I changed up my chemical composition. It's part of capturing the journey at every stage. I think it's actually quite good, because it is really interesting for me to reflect on my feeling at the moment. I do feel this uncanny return of testosterone into my body, and I'm not sure if it's too high or too low. It's been a really interesting few weeks where some of my physiological changes slowed down a lot, and I was feeling this return of this more, for lack of a better word, forceful energy, an energy of Dude Mode Jazz, my
Dude
previous
Mode Jazz.
self. That's how we now refer to him.
Okay, him.
The persona that was. And yeah, there's this interesting feeling there of that kind of like subtly returning that I don't love it. I don't love this feeling. It feels a bit abrasive and unlike myself. But I've been trusting the process and riding with it and letting it all be outside of my control, which has been difficult. There's been times I've been really stressing about it, and I'm like, I just want to get to where I need to be and just stay there for a bit. I don't want to be in this place of uncertainty. And I called my endocrinologist in a panic, and they were like, look, let's just wait it out. Patience. And so...
Not a great Clifton strength, patience. Hey, life forces it on us, and it's done that for both of us.
Yes. It does. Well, it does that for everyone. Patience is a virtue that one can never escape from.
Yeah.
And unless one wants to go mad, fighting the flow of things.
Yeah. I think I've learnt patience, actually. I actually think it's almost becoming a necessary part of my life.
Yeah, good. You don't seem too patient when you're wheeling into the living room and blasting loud tunes.
Jem, I tell you to fuck off, but that would be perfectly inappropriate for a podcast.
You don't tell family to fuck off, Dad.
Okay. My audience...
Not family.
My audience are flabbergasted at the moment. Hey, that's hormones. You want to say anything else about that? Because I'd like to have some other conversation.
Yeah. Well, just that. Yeah, it's been interesting, I guess, reflecting on how the progesterone was really affecting me at that time, and now I'm having this like return of energy again. Yeah, I think that's all I need to say about it.
All right. Well, look, I'd like to have a talk with you about two things that came up in conversations recently. In fact, I was staying in Sydney with on my own, had a really interesting... I met an amazing person, a non-binary disability care worker called Vesna.
Shout out to Vesna.
Vesna, you are a legend. We just had such a great time.
Marvelous
Auntie
human being.
Vesna, they are a drag queen, rock, punk performer.
Shredder.
And
Guitar shredder.
Disability care worker who the universe... That's her words. I would say Providence. Their words. Different words. Brought together to do my care work while I was in Sydney, and we met Jem. We had a great time. So shout out to Vesna.
Who also has a podcast called Ask Auntie.
Ask Auntie Vesna, isn't it?
It's just Ask Auntie,
Ask
I think,
Auntie,
on
yes.
Spotify. Check it out. They chat to...
Steph Fenton.
Yeah, they chatted to Steph Fenton recently, but also a bunch of LGBT artists to get performance.
Yeah, very good.
Work supported. So yeah, amazing work. But
we had dinner the other night, and we were talking with Vesna and yourself about some of your experiences, and I found it actually quite hard to hear about a couple of experiences you had. The first was one we were just talking about whether you experienced sort of, public transgender discrimination. And you talked about an experience you had on a beach on Maroubra recently with a bunch of young teenage boys.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
So I was going down to the beach for a beautiful, one of the rare sunny days in Sydney these days.
It is winter as we're recording this podcast, August.
Yeah, August, cold times, but one of my favorite times for ocean dips. Really makes you feel alive, gets the systems pumping. And so, yeah, just went for a midday dip with my housemate, and we were on the beach, had a quick swim, was walking out, and
I should say, and this is a weird thing to say as a dad, Jem does wear a pretty out there sexy bikini.
Your skills of observation. I feel like it's not that out there for the
Maruberites.
well, no, just for the I don't know, the current fashion trends. It's a pretty standard bikini.
All
It's it's a triangle bikini, a bit cheeky on the bum.
Cheeky, yeah.
But yeah, if you've got it, flaunt it, right?
Yeah, go for it. Of course. I'm not saying that negatively.
So maybe I definitely stand out. And this is the interesting thing, right? Is that I am midway through my transition at the moment in public, and something that I've been reflecting on a lot, because it's becoming quite stark that like I can't hide in either camp right now. I am very clearly trans.
Yeah.
And
you're not passing
probably
as a non-trans woman, as a cis woman, are you?
No. And whether I'm that's a point for reflection, is whether or not I need to or should or want to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been an interesting little journey for me in realizing that, and having to just own it constantly. And so I was on the beach and I was drying myself with a towel, and start hearing these young teenage boys calling out "sir" quite obnoxiously in Australian bogan, "sir, sir," and pretty immediately I knew that it was directed at me, but I was just playing it off, ignoring it, pretending, oh well, there's no way people would be calling "sir" to me. But there was many people on the beach, and after a little while of it going on, I looked up to check out what all the fuss was about, and there was a bunch of teenage boys staring at me, and one of them yells, "Oh, my mate wants your snap, sir." Which...
What's a snap? Excuse my ignorance.
Once your Snapchat, it's essentially like, to want someone's snap is to want to see their like private media, as if I have some kind of, as if I'd be sending them, because Snapchat is the social media where you send photos that only last for 10 seconds. So it's renowned as the app for sending nudes. And so essentially they were using me being trans to disparage their friend as being gay, or
which of course is to confuse what trans is as well.
Yeah. But it is, I guess it's still a social stigma to be attracted to a trans woman, which is a disgusting thing. But it's the world of teenage boys.
I was talking to Vesna about this, and they were saying one of the things about the common conception of a trans woman is it's very sexualized. Society thinks of it, of a trans person in very sexualized ways, either as an object of sexual attraction or sexual disgust, and they think about it as a sexual identity rather than a gendered identity.
Well, isn't that just misogyny manifest?
Yeah,
it's part of that whole, like, I guess the overarching presence of the male gaze as a motivating force for women in society.
Yeah. I mean, I was laughing a second ago with you I guess I've had some space, because when I first heard it, as a dad, it made me very sad and teary and angry. My initial response was, did you go and punch them in the head? But that's a very masculine response. And it's projecting a masculine response onto you, which is not how you react. It's how did you feel at the time?
With the appropriate amount of sass in a hair flick and walk away.
Did you feel vulnerable? And
I did. Well, like, yes and no. Very much the opinions of teenage boys in Maroubra
don't matter to you.
Water off a duck's back to a large degree. But
what about the safety issues that we're dealing with there?
Yeah. I didn't necessarily feel unsafe, only because I was on a public beach in the middle of the day. I'm sure I could have felt more unsafe. And I also just I just knew to not humor it and walk away. I just expected that if I don't yell anything at these people, I'm probably not going to be opening myself up to possible danger. And I would be if I yelled back. People can get reactive. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. It's just I'm in a very blessed position where these are like very rare experiences for me. And so I think because of that, I can very much let it go. It's there is still like an internalized insecurity that I have about how other people see me, and that does affect how I feel about myself. But I'm pretty constantly trying to do the work to let that go at the moment. That's my like current main meal in my mind.
Well, that does bring us to the question of bathrooms.
Yeah.
I think I raised the question with you about 6 months ago about what bathrooms you were using, and at that point you were still using men's bathrooms. At what point did you decide to start using women's bathrooms?
I can't remember. I've been using women's bathrooms now for the past few months. I just kind of got to a point where I felt this like weird self-invalidation when I was walking into male bathrooms. And it was at the stage where I was starting to turn heads in both bathrooms.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just decided for myself to honor my own truth. I would use female bathrooms, and yeah, because I'm like I can definitely cloak myself in femininity a fair bit.
Let's just address, and I'm going to do this. I don't think it's your responsibility to do this, to address the question of bathroom safety, which is this issue of transgender people using bathrooms of the opposite gender. Always gets raised in terms of women's safety. And there's this sort of prevailing assumption that goes along with that question, which is that, you know, transgender people are dressing as women, and that women in women's bathrooms are vulnerable to being attacked by a person dressed by a man disguising themselves in a dress to infiltrate the bathroom. Yes. And it's sort of this prevailing conversation. Unfortunately, it stems from as influential people as Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling. Yeah. And it's really unfortunate because the fact of the matter is that the people that there's just no record of transgender, or if there is, it's extremely, extremely rare, of transgender people attacking women in bathrooms. In fact, you're much more likely to just be a cisgendered man attacking boys and girls in bathrooms. You don't have to dress in a dress to attack someone in a bathroom. In fact, what you're wearing is probably the least likely to be the cause of an attack in bathroom. But what we absolutely know, that the people that are much more likely to get abused and attacked in bathrooms is transgender women in male bathrooms are going to be subject to forms of whether verbal or violent abuse. So the vulnerable people, if we really did care about vulnerability, if that was the driving issue here, then we'd be comfortable with transgender women in female bathrooms. But that's actually not what's driving the bulk of these conversations. What's driving the bulk of these conversations is the typical transphobia. It's men shouldn't be in women's bathrooms. But as soon as someone phrases the conversation in that way, it's a refusal. It's transphobia right at the heart, because it's a refusal to recognize
truth as
the gender.
Woman. Yeah.
So let's just get that off the table. And as a dad, I feel like I can make that case in a way that Jem doesn't, because I care about Jem's safety and and right to be herself. So you've been
Can
attending.
I also just quickly add to that is it's interesting, like we've already spoken about the fact that we're machines powered by different chemical hormones, and I'm taking a hormone that totally alters my chemical makeup. I am in no way the same as a dangerous man anymore. You know, I also have never been a dangerous man, and so I get that there's this male fear that predominates, and sometimes we do need to paint with a general brush in order to protect ourselves. But trans women, by merit of taking hormones, really do remove their danger.
Yeah.
And you can tell pretty quickly if someone's on hormones.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry.
So, I guess look, this is an interesting conversation. One of the things that was interesting though, it's still, and I guess it's about the way in which you're judged in public and the psychological challenge of choosing a bathroom. Do you almost feel like at the moment, I just hate public bathrooms because
I hate public bathrooms.
I'm in a lose-lose situation, whether it's the men's bathroom or the women's bathroom.
It's suddenly really uncomfortable going to the bathroom in public. Yeah, it is something that I have taken for granted for a long time, that just going to the bathroom is easy, and it's not anymore. It's really confronting in both cases. In female bathrooms, whenever I enter a female bathroom, I have this deep fear in myself that other people are feeling uncomfortable by me being there, and that I just, I mean, for one, I just don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. That's a really gross feeling to be harboring. And adding to that, I also don't want to get in trouble. I don't want someone to have a go at me in a bathroom and start attacking my trans identity and saying, "You're a man, get out of here." Like, that's a really confronting experience also. And so there's these strong fears whenever I'm in a bathroom right now. And I mean, in a lot of ways, I'm using it as a way to just practice focusing on my internal truth and relaxing and letting go and just accepting myself.
You said you had challenges in the snow recently.
Yeah. So because I have these strong fears, I mean, yeah, just as an added point, if I'm in the female bathrooms and I'm talking to people, I feel scared even just speaking, because my voice is still in the in-between. I'm still trying to learn how to sound feminine when I talk, and I'm scared of voicing in a way that sounds masculine, like giving myself away, in quotation marks.
But you've already started this conversation by saying you can't not give yourself away.
I can't not give myself away. Yeah. So it's really scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went to the snow recently, and in this environment, I can't cloak myself in feminism because I'm wearing really
snow pants,
bulky snow clothing, and I only have also male snow gear because that shit is expensive. And so, the best I can do at the snow is pull out, they're called
your
slut
bangs?
strands.
Oh, slut strands. Okay.
That's snow terminology for it. Which, by the way, not a disparagement. This is women reclaiming the word slut. So power. Yeah. But yeah, having the two little bits of your fringe sticking out the side of your face mask and helmet is kind of what gives away whether a person is male or female.
We need to purchase you next year a pink, an obviously pink ski suit, but in the interim.
But yeah, who knows? Maybe it'll get better. But I'm 6'2" and in snow gear, I come across pretty male, and I got to the snow, and I hadn't really thought about this until I suddenly needed to go to the bathroom, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can't do this. I can't walk into a female bathroom right now because I'm too scared that people are just going to be like, what the hell is this male doing in here?" So I just went back to using male bathrooms. Just for the period of being at the snow. But
I'm going to give you some advice here.
Yes.
And this is advice that no one in this podcast is allowed to listen to. which is
all of you don't get these secrets for free.
use the disabled bathroom.
Yeah.
And disability is a broad category. There's a thing called invisible disability. And I think in some cases, if we define disability as being about the way in which society disables or my disability is not the fact that I can't walk, but that society is shaped in such a way as to not include me. In that situation, maybe you're in a disabling situation and it's an appropriate thing to use a disabled bathroom. And if you ever see a person who doesn't look like they've got a disability walking out of a disabled bathroom, you don't know whether they have an invisible disability. Actually, the way I can
invisible
tell...
disability is crippling binary bathroom phobia.
Yes. So anyway, there was the advice that no one on the podcast, I was just talking to you privately, and we'll just cut that off from the podcast.
Tech team, get on it.
Yeah. So you went to, in that case, the male bathroom, and that equally just felt invalidating. Is that?
Yeah, it just like it's a it's not a big deal at the end of the day. It was just
at least it's not going into in quite the same way as, because normally if you went into nowadays into the male bathroom now, it's you stand out as well there. So
yeah, exactly. I could click myself in masculinity when I needed to, which was, it's a nice safe out of an anxious situation. But yeah, it does just feel a bit odd, I guess. And yeah, so then I came back from the snow and I went to the local steam room with my housemate again. And the steam room's at the local RSL in Maroubra. And we just went on an evening, went up. It's got like a gym floor and a pool and a steam room in there. It's just like kind of like your local rec room facilities. And as we were walking in, like my housemate is female. We've walked in. She's just started walking to the female bathrooms, and then suddenly I'm confronted with this bathroom dilemma again. And I was like, this is the first public bathroom I'd used since the snow, and I've just got that all fresh in my mind. I'm like now my default is like fleeing to the male bathroom out of fear. So I was like, no, confront this. You're a woman. You're with your housemate who can vouch for you.
Yeah.
Go into the female change rooms. And so went, changed, had a steam, everything was fine. No confrontation. I thought I was, yay, I can use public bathrooms without fear again. But then the next morning I wake up and I needed to take my car into the mechanic and I couldn't find my keys.
This is, look, it's just something about my children and the loss of keys that it's just, whether they're male, female, or non-binary, my children are hopeless.
And I think we get it from you and not mum.
That's not true.
Yeah, so I'd lost my keys for the 10th time that week. And in a quick reflection on where I'd been, I suddenly realized I'd left my jacket in the female change rooms at the pools. And I was like, oh no, now I have to go back and get that. And this like fear arose in me, like, oh, what is this experience going to be like? And I went to the RSL, asked the front desk if they had a lost property, and they directed me to the gym floor attendant, who was an older male, and I walked up to him and the first thing I did was I walked in and I checked the female bathrooms to see if my jacket was still hanging. So I walk in, just have a quick look. There's like tons of women in there, so I get scared and I run out of the bathroom. But my jacket wasn't there, so I walk up to the floor attendant and I was like, sorry, I left my jacket here last night. Have you had any jackets handed in? And he was like, where did you leave it? And I'm trying to be my most feminine in my intermediate stages. And I said, I left my bathroom in the female change room. And
you left your bathroom in the
my
female
bathroom,
change.
my jacket in the female change rooms, in the female jacket. And just immediately felt this like weird glare from him. And I'm now confronted with judgment, which, who knows, very much might be my own perception.
I was going to say, here's the real challenge, isn't there, in the public space? You've got to work out, and you just don't know what a person's thinking. So are you projecting your own fear onto a person's response, or is there cues that you can tell, or, that's actually a difficult space to navigate.
Yeah.
And for me, this is an interesting one because it's true for disability as well. I can distinctly remember the first time I went outside in a wheelchair, and I was at Prince of Wales Hospital in Randwick, and I went outside and I burst into tears because I felt so visible, so sort of visible. Everyone's looking at me, and I was with my mum at the time, and we turned the wheelchair around and I went back inside. And in that case, almost certainly, I mean, look, the truth is, like up the street, people probably do look at me, and I do get those stares, but I'm also projecting because actually most people don't care less about anyone else and are just thinking about themselves and what they had for breakfast. So that whole challenge of projecting our fear and our shame into other people's thoughts. But then again, you're a transgender woman and people do judge, and they do respond to you in cues that you can tell. So this is not an easy space to navigate.
No, yeah, exactly. The reason why I have fears is because to be a minority in our current world is to face ridicule and judgment. And in my case, I'm in a public facility talking to someone who might hold conservative views from a generation before mine, where things were a bit more black and white. And more than likely he could just turn to me and scold me for
what are you doing in a female bathroom?
Yeah, exactly.
Did he do that?
And I don't want to get in trouble. No. But it is this. It's so funny, this feeling of fear about getting in trouble as an adult. It's still there. No one wants to get in trouble. You want to be law-abiding citizens. But yeah, so anyway, this experience was essentially feeling judged. Then this search for this jacket ensued, and he's pulling in other staff members and recounting this story and kept asking me where I left it. And I keep having to admit to people that I'm using the female change rooms, and I'm trying to make it like really obvious, like, I'm trans, please accept me, I'm trans. But I don't want to have to also say, like, I'm using the female bathrooms, I'm trans. And I think in some cases, like, people don't probably expect to run into a trans person. They probably think I'm gay prepared. Or something, a gay male, because I'm so in this intermediate stage.
So did it work out? Did they find your jacket, and were they generally kind to you?
Yes, they found my jacket and they were generally kind to me. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much I was projecting. I walked out of that place feeling really comfortable, and by the end of it, I grabbed my jacket and ran. I fled the scene. I was just so uncomfortable, and I left the building and I cried, and I still couldn't find my keys.
Oh, the keys weren't in the jacket. Where were the keys? See, this is a Clifton thing. Can't blame transgender on this.
The keys weren't in the jacket.
Where were they?
The funniest part of the whole thing. Because then I was like, in my head, I'm like, I have to go back in there and find my keys. And I was just too scared. And so I found them. They were outside my apartment on the ground. For other reasons. There's a good reason why they were there, and I realized it. But I mean, look, it was a hilarious adventure where I found the jacket that I wouldn't have found. But regardless.
Look, and I do think, so there's multiple dimensions of this. Some of this is, the whole world, including you, is getting used to transgender women. You're getting used to this. I think the experience of being transgender, you feel much more obvious in the first year, as I did with disability. You know, for the first few years, every time you walk down the street, you feel like you stand out. And it's been 12 years and I don't think about that anymore. And I hope that's true for you. It might not be in the same way. I think although disability, you know, is still marginal and we're still obvious and still looked at, it's not quite with the same judgmental sense necessarily as transgender. But having said that,
It's
I
probably
think there is
it's probably
increasing
more
acceptance
pity
now.
than disgust in the disabled case versus the transgender case.
Yeah, but the world's changing for both.
Yeah.
So there
Thank
was a
God.
lot more pity and, you know, presumption about disability 10 years ago. I think that's true for transgender people 10 years ago. We are living in a world that is more accepting. But I think the challenge is to find a way of being comfortable in ourselves, whether that's disability, transgender, whatever it is, that's your difference, whether you're, you know, feel too skinny, feel too fat, feel like your hair's messy, and whatever it is that we're so sure that other people are looking at us and judging us, which probably they are, somehow finding a way of saying, fuck what everyone else thinks. I am me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be comfortable in it while also I quite like your kindness. You're not doing that in a way that is saying, I've sworn too much in this podcast, stuff you, because you the way you described it, you understand that a person's of a previous generation and hasn't had a time to adjust. So I admire the kindness in there. I think we need to find ways of being comfortable with ourselves, even while understanding that there's reasons why other people might not yet be comfortable.
There's a reason for everything.
Yeah.
Like, again, we're autonomous. We're not autonomous beings. We are products of our world. We're products of our chemicals. I saw a person today walking out of the shops today with a barcode on the back of their head. And you know, there's the symbol of being a product. And I guess in their case, they were making a anti-capitalism statement or something. But we are very much products. And so, yeah, even the people judging us, you know, as social justice warriors, I don't personally feel like the way to change people's minds is by conquering. I think it's by extending love. And so, yeah, I am accepting of the fact that my road isn't easy.
For you or for anyone?
For me or for anyone. And no one's road is easy. Yeah, I mean, my road used to be easier with public bathrooms. Now it's just a bit scary. But I'm also...
for me, this is a plea for kindness.
Yeah, me too. Please be kind to trans people you see in the bathroom. We're just trying to use the public bathrooms to excrete waste like the rest of us. Nothing funny. I mean, it's kind of funny excreting waste, but nothing outside of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's just reflective of my state at the moment, which is as finding myself. And yeah, I've been reflecting a lot on how I guess it's so hard to say in advance how easy or difficult a journey is going to be. And I thought that I could just start taking hormones and things would kind of just take care of themselves. And I could just continue living my life and doing a PhD and, you know, trying to work on other areas of my life as well. But it hasn't been like that. It's been a huge transition. And part of that transition is in...
They call it a transition.
Yeah. It's in letting go of the things that made me comfortable, because the things that made me comfortable are these habits and the persona of Dude Mode Jazz that made me feel likable and, you know, acceptable in the eyes of society. I'm having to let go of those feelings of being accepted so that I can make space for the real me to emerge, whether or not she is accepted. because I accept her, and that's where I'm trying to get to is
and the
I
people that
accept
matter
me
accept you too, Jem.
and the people that matter, which is I'm so blessed to be in this position where I really have incredible support. Yeah. So I mean, that's another funny point. I'm taking a break from my PhD.
Yeah.
Which has come because of just the constant stress of transitioning, and it was just too much doing those two things at once. Maybe my values are changing. Maybe they were always this way. I think
How much of your sense of your own sort of capacity is tied into I'm a PhD student?
yeah, a lot of it was. It's really, really funny. I guess I love.
It's not that you're not a PhD student. You're what do you call it? It's a because you haven't
I'm not.
quit
I haven't
yet,
withdrawn. Yeah, I'm just on a break.
but nevertheless, you're letting
Postponement.
go of that for the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess like the reason why I wanted the thing that drove me to academia in the first place was I guess in the one part a curiosity to answer questions, but also largely an achievement drive, where because I didn't love myself, I was trying to seek out validation through productivity, through making an identity for myself in the world. And now that I am choosing to make space for my inner identity, I don't feel the need to be as academic, because I just love myself already, and I'm finding this amazing, like, just this simple joy in existing where I don't. I guess before I had this like evaluation going on all the time of like, oh, I need to find the best music or watch the best things or find the best information so that I can, use that socially to get clout and respect and make an identity for myself so that people will love me so that I can love myself. And now I'm finding I love being me, and that's already good enough. And I just kind of like whatever the universe gives me, whatever information, if I'm enjoying it, even if it's not the best, it's just good.
Having spent a couple of decades in that academic journey, having sometimes gained a modicum of respect and clout, it's not actually worth anything. And most of us are one of the sort of deepest and most profound Christian notions that I really hang on to is that virtue of humility, recognizing not our insignificance, maybe that in a positive way, our littleness in this massive universe is actually somehow beautiful, and being at peace with that. And once we can accept our littleness, it also helps us not to feel the need to gain the validity of others by seeming to be significant. And I think the academic pathway can look like it's a pathway to significance, and maybe there's a couple of significant academics out there, but there's also just a lot of I think if you do any pathway for external validation, it's
going to be a grind.
Yeah,
it's going to be hard work. Yeah. And that's what it was. The PhD was killing me.
Well, certainly while you were trying to transition. So who knows, once you've gotten through this space, whether you might be able to re-embrace it in a different way in the future. But
yeah,
but
my values are calling me in different directions now. I'm now feeling a lot more inspired to directly help people, using my, the battle that I've had with mental health and all of the reading that I've done in that and spirituality to actually
you'd have a psychological degree as well. So.
I have a psych degree. Yeah. And so I'd love to, I'm thinking about going into clinical psychology. And the thought that really inspires me is it's like, I don't want to be striving for success anymore. I just want to like spend my days chatting to people instead of sitting in front of a desk. And it's really interesting whether my values have changed because of my hormones or whether that value was always there and it was clouded by this drive for achievement. All of these interesting questions about identity and self arise, but it is an unfolding, changing in values for me.
And we'll come back to that. Jem is about to head away to Thailand to study yoga for a month. Is that right?
Yes. So the next step, I'm taking a break from my PhD, going to go study yoga, do some spiritual practice and expanding, and then come back and be able to work as a yoga teacher, which really excites me. So I'm going to be in Thailand for 6 weeks.
Very good. We will miss you. I think you will be recording a podcast with Steph Fenton again, which will come out in the interim.
Yeah.
So we won't be podcast free in that time. And maybe when Jem's away, I might go and interview 1 or 2 people. We'll see. Keep the Change podcast going
without me, the tech team.
Oh gosh, look, that could be complex. In fact, that may be preventative, but we'll see how we go. Hey, we were contemplating when we started this conversation talking about transport, but you know what? That's a conversation for another
day. Yeah, we've had our own little sport match of back and forth.
Hey, it was fun.
Dominated by a trans woman.
Love you, Jem.
Love you, Dad.
Peace and goodwill.
Thanks for listening.